Sriracha only gets peppers from this guy. Like it's like their kids grew up together. That's trust. That's almost like blood. And something went wrong. Someone did a misstep, and then the finger pointing began. And this is hundreds of millions of dollars, almost 30 years of a relationship together built on trust and faith in one another. And their egos were triggered and they couldn't back down. And not only did they part ways, but they went for each other's jugulars.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. I have a very cool guest today. Her name is Joanna Shea. Joanna, how's it going?
It's pretty fantastic. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining. And so the last time we tried to get together doing this, the internet gods just were not blessing us, and it was causing us to do a
They
little
were so
twitchy
spiteful.
things.
Yep.
Yeah, they were. So here's a better recording today. So, Joanna, you have an interesting background. You're doing some interesting things in negotiation and conflict resolution. Why don't you introduce yourself, what you do, and how you help folks?
Okay, thank you. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Negotiations Collective. Our company was formed about 4 years ago, and it's been an adventure. So my background is 20 plus years in the energy, utility, and infrastructure space, negotiating rather large acquisitions, divestments, master service agreements, etc. And I've had tables flipped and coffees thrown at my head. Yeah. And about 5 years ago, courtesy of LinkedIn and the adventure that it is, someone with FBI training reached out to me and he said, well, it looks like you understand terms and conditions and contracts and business. That's great. But how do you profile people? And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And, I grew up in very sophisticated energy companies. Like we went through some really rigorous training, but that was on NPV, like economic analysis, optimization. But never once did we sit deeply and focus on the one thing we all always negotiate which was people. And so that fellow blew my brain. I'm very rarely speechless, and I was. And it began an adventure that's now turned into our firm. So our company is comprised of individuals that are retired from the FBI or FBI trained hostage negotiators, undercover agents, blended with some amazing professionals that are either academics in the negotiation space or very seasoned commercial government negotiators. And we help our clients push for more. I'd love to pretend we're teaching rocket science, David, but we're not. We're quite literally giving people the confidence to engage in that difficult conversation, because if they don't do that, they're never going to get more.
Yeah. And I, for the folks who are watching this video right now, I have your website here, and it looks like you've worked with like some pretty big customers here, right? Everything from academics to BMO Bank to the Canadian Chart Professional Accountants. So you have a good diversity.
Company now, like we haven't updated that client list in quite some time. So yeah, we work from it with A to Z.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about profiling, and so let's dive into that. I think that's pretty interesting, because running negotiation and conflict resolution, you've hired people who are ex-law enforcement, hostage negotiators. So I think your firm knows a thing or two about profiling people. But I guess for the folks out there, when you say profiling people, what's that mean, and what do you do there?
To me, everyone has their own definition based on my work, my research, and my exposure to my incredible teammates. Profiling means a quick assessment of your counterpart. So first impressions are made within 10 seconds. But if you can get them talking, open them up, open-ended questions, solicitation of information, you should be able to get your finger on what personality type they are at a high level within 5 minutes. Quick, how they dress, the words that they say, how they describe themselves, even how they sit with you. Yeah. It's all signs of who you're dealing with. And if you don't adjust yourself, you're not going to lower their zone of resistance to you, which means it's not going to go so smooth.
So what are the profiles of people, like when you're looking at
the gobbledygook, like the hocus pocus?
Yeah, and I guess, like, have you actually codified this into a system where it's like you're person A, B, C, D, E, or is this something more vague, more nebulous into like when you're saying this is the type of person I'm negotiating with. I'm just wondering how systematized have you made this?
I feel like we could put on like the Jaws music before I give up all the secrets away, like the
Oh,
dun,
oh, these are trade
dun,
secrets. All
dun,
right,
dun. No, I'm
this is
kidding.
even better.
No, so I've had the good fortune of studying
Yeah.
negotiations at curated programs and companies I used to work
Mm.
for at Harvard, at Columbia. I'm studying at Stanford in the fall. I have read, I'd say, half the books out there on
Hmm.
negotiations, and I could have come up with something on my own. But the best model that we've come across, and we teach is the Thomas-Killman model.
Right.
So it's 30 years old, and it puts you and I, all of us, on a scale of assertiveness and cooperativeness.
Mm.
And people have rebranded things. I want to give credit where credit's due. I love the work that Thomas-Killman and their research team has completed. It dives very deeply. And so that Thomas-Killman, so again, anyone listening, go do your work, go dig in and learn it. It's wonderful. And it puts you on that scale where if you're high assertive and you really don't give a crap about anybody else, your profile would be a competer.
Hmm.
That's an exhausting space if that's the where you are all day long, every day. The opposite of that is high assertive, or pardon me, high cooperative, no assertive, and that's an accommodator. And that honestly is the sweet spot for our training. There you go.
Yeah. There you
Absolutely.
go.
It's great work. And anybody listening to this, if you find yourself looking at this model and know and recognize yourself in accommodation, it's time to grow that backbone.
Mm. Grow the backbone.
That's a dangerous spot to be. It
Yeah.
is,
Yep.
because you concede, and then you get pissed off. But the tough part of this is that, like, and I mean this with much love, if you say yes to something that's not good for you, it's your own damn fault.
Hmm. Hmm.
You said yes.
Yeah. And so for the folks who are just listening to this, we popped up on the screen the Thomas-Killman conflict model, and there's like 5 areas here. Competing,
Yeah, 5 types.
yeah, 5 types. And it's 2 scales. On the y-axis is assertiveness, and on the x-axis is cooperativeness. And then you have the different quadrants. So competing, collaborating, accommodating, avoiding, and somewhere in the middle is someone who's compromising, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so
bang on.
you use this model, and I guess when you look at this model, the Thomas-Killman model, and how you leverage it, I do want to dive in. You talked about with me offline around the 4 R's of negotiation. Where does this
Yeah.
Thomas-Killman model of negotiation, and where do your 4 R's come in?
Okay. So when we teach our training, first you got to be self-aware. If you are looking at the world like everyone else is against you, you have to scrub your mirror. You have to get a better view. So our first part of our negotiation and conflict resolution, honestly, before strategic or after strategic networking, which we can touch on, is the self-awareness. So we have a case study where we put people in a room. It's a soft case study, but you flare. Your negotiation and conflict type flares in that case study. So then what we do is there's a self-assessment of where you are on that 5-person scale or chart. And then we break it down on how, first is when to use that style and when not to. There's pros and cons to all 5 types. Skilled negotiators and conflict resolvers, we can pivot on a dime. I don't love swimming in the compete space, but when pushed, I can punch,
Mhm.
right? And then again, we go over which type to be when, the risks to using and the pros. Then we do identification, like language that's used, body language that's used to identify their style and your counterpart, another portion of the profiling, and then how to get the best out of them.
Mhm.
Because how you engage an accommodator is very different from how you would engage a computer. So once that self-awareness is established, David, then we dig into what we call our 4 R's of conflict resolution. First is respect, then react, respond, and resolve. So respect is another, people tease us. It's almost like being on a couch with us. Tell us your feelings. How are you feeling? But with respect, when there's a conflict, whether or not you did it intentionally, you're part of the problem. And so when we dig into respect, it's about what fears were triggered. What did you do to have them react in that hostile way? And so for our fears, for us, that stands for fairness, empathy, autonomy, or recognition. I mean, we could go into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but the fears punch straight to desires. And if somebody is driven by fairness and they feel like you treated them unfairly, you got a problem, right? Some people lead with their feelings, so it's all about empathy. Others, myself being one of them, is autonomy. Don't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or recognition. And so respect is about assessing your own fears, what your primary drivers are, and then looking at your counterpart and saying, which did I trigger? Which did I pull? And recognizing, okay, I got to walk this back. I have to figure out how to sort this out.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next stage, the next R, is your reaction. If you think you got a problem, you think you should solve it over text, like abort. No, right?
I mean, you don't break up with someone over text.
Oh
You
my
don't
God,
do that.
grow up, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Ask for
geez,
someone's hand in marriage over text.
oh, yeah, no. But so reaction is controlling yourself, right? Not jumping straight to it, being very deep in how you engage with the person. So we get quite tactical in our training on how to control your reaction, like recognizing that when you start blaming someone, you got a problem
Yeah.
because you stopped listening. When you lose control, you got a problem, you stop listening, and then you get defensive. And when people are blaming or getting defensive, they've stopped listening. They've kicked straight to sell. You're wrong, I'm right, and I'm going to shove this down your throat. That doesn't go well
Yeah.
in a conflict.
Yeah.
So then with the respect and then the react assessment, then it's the response, like even the tone in which you engage with someone, like high pitch, low pitch, the cadence of your words, where you engage with them, the time of day that you engage with them. That's being very, very strategic. Like if you want to solve a problem and you've triggered somebody's ego, like by say lack of recognition, and you try and corner them in the coffee room at 4:30 at the end of the day, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you take time, take them for a walk, take them out of a place where their ego's not going to be attacked, and open up with, let's discuss this, I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
you got a chance. And then at that point, if you've respected, you've reacted appropriately and responded accordingly, that's when you can resolve. And that's the real negotiation skills, is getting very empathetic, being extremely tactical, having a strategy. Don't just show up and throw up. Like sit, think, prepare, and then you've got a chance.
So, and this is a system you and your business partners came up with, right?
Yeah.
And I guess you mentioned at the beginning, I'm very curious, like working backwards from these 4 Rs, right at the beginning, you said you had coffee and tables flipped on you, coffee thrown at you in your negotiations.
Oh, yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like good times. I'm wondering how that might have shaped your 4 Rs approach. Like,
All of them.
yeah, like can you talk, first of all, talk about the coffee flying across the room, talk about the tables. Okay.
That one was, oh my gosh, that was a while ago. That was when I was in the energy industry and I was leading a negotiation where I had 21 companies behind me. So you talk about multiple personalities. I won't say it was 99 rabbitish, but that was really tough. And I had to bring those 21 different organizations with different priorities to the table to then have me negotiate with an 800-pound gorilla.
Nice.
And the 800-pound gorilla, he sucked. Like he was 6'3", probably 300 pounds. Like he was a bully. And I was young and I was out of my league. And I mean, it took me 3 years, but that company, so a lot of like contracts obviously have termination clauses. And this one in particular, 2 of those 21 parties had misstepped. Could have been resolved if they've checked their ego, but they didn't. What the 800-pound gorilla did was for 3 years, they extended the termination clause by 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, if you weren't keeping them happy, stroking their egos, doing exactly what they wanted, that thing was dead and we would have kicked to $1 billion litigation suit. So you talk about anxiety and the health of your heart and your mental state.
Yeah.
Like that was, you want to talk about pain? I mean, I was on blood pressure medication. I was losing hair. I got Hi Friends online. I got hemorrhoids. Like it was bad from stress. And in that time, one time there was a table flipped and a coffee thrown and a whole bunch of colorful words used at me. And I learned, I pushed, I got it done. and I built some serious resiliency and some chops because of it. But I never want to treat anybody like that. And I don't want anybody that ever takes our training to ever think that treating anybody like that is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess in that situation was, you're seeing this individual, this gorilla.
And he was allowed to behave that way. I had CEOs going above him to his CEO, and it was excused.
Right.
It was permitted.
Was that a cover for a lack of actual capability in this case?
Lack of a whole bunch of things, but we're on record, so I'll check.
Okay. I don't want to get you in trouble. All right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess when you think about your experiences there early in your career, how did you, what did you learn from that eventually connected you to this, what you're doing now? Like, what was that journey looking like?
So I am very good with people. I genuinely love people. They are the best part of my day. And sometimes the worst, but I'm curious about them. And oh my God, in some of those negotiations, if I knew then what I know now, I would have been so better equipped. I was ill prepared. I was not trained. I didn't have a process in place. And I got a lot of stuff done and I did a great job on my own accord.
Yeah.
But if my organizations, as I progressed through them, had continued to commit to my training like that, I mean, litigation's not fun. Conflict is not fun. And it eats away at companies' resources. Like those passive aggressive cuts, even in the hallway, that ruins productivity. And if people could just own that maybe they were offside as well and engaged in those difficult conversations. I mean, I'm not a researcher, but I can't even imagine how much money each organization would save if they really invested in training, having people be prepared and equipped to have difficult conversations, sort out the problem when it happens, and move forward.
Yeah. So when you look at where, in your travels then as a teaching negotiations and such, what's a good example of good negotiation or good conflict resolution? What have you seen that is? This is what good looks like.
Oh, a whole bunch of the deals that I got done.
Like, what was it about that deal? Like you talk about the Thomas-Killman, you talk about the 4 Rs, like what came together there that helped it go well?
There's a nerdy term, biobehavioral synchrony.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's when you sync.
Okay.
Like obviously your counterpart has their objectives in mind. If you're lucky, they're there to be your friend after the fact, but you're not there to be your friend. But it's about respect and it's about trust. And the best negotiations that I engage with are the ones where I have time to follow quite literally what we train, David, is our process. Like, unlike some of my colleagues that are hostage negotiators, I've never had a gun pointed at my head. I've never had to react so quickly or a bomb's about to blow up. I've had the privilege to suss out what company I'm going to be dealing with, what departments I'm going to be engaging with, who's the leader of those departments. And then I dig in and I start to build a relationship. I get to know them. I get to understand them. I need to determine if there is actually a zone of negotiation. What they want is, can we provide? And what they give us is what we want. Right? That's the slow burn.
Yep.
You get in, you build that relationship. And in that time that I'm building that relationship, I am profiling them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm assessing, I'm understanding, I'm learning, I'm pivoting, I'm being nimble.
Yeah.
I'm always deploying the 4 Rs about respect, react, respond, resolve. And then in that negotiation, it's the value assessment. Because if your counterpart, if you're working together, you're disclosing.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything. You got to keep some stuff there, but like you're really understanding what they want. Why are you at the table? What do they want? What are their top 5 value drivers? And then the same for you. What do you want? Why are you there? Why are you in a negotiation? Take that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then being very tactical in that launch, when you're dropping your anchor, when you're kicking off the actual value negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like it's give and it's take and there's friction and it's tough. Negotiations are hard. But as long as there is goal alignment and that when you're transparent and when you're being strategic and you're disclosing your wants, you're seeing that you guys are going to build so much more together. It's not just cutting the pie in half. That's boring. I want the pie and I want the chocolate sundae with the whipped cream and the cherry and the right? And if I've done a good negotiation, I'm going to find that cherry in that sundae.
Yeah, and that eventually comes out when you talk a lot about the relationship and building a trusted relationship with them. Now, I am curious, and what came to mind when you started talking about like desserts just now was
Carrot cake.
whatever. Choose your poison. You're teaching conflict resolution and negotiation from a lot of like a corporate perspective or a
Very
business
much so.
perspective. How does this apply in the personal life? Have you applied this in
I'm
with?
still married.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Happily.
Okay.
No, like, so not a joke is that like, I mean, marriage is, man, it should come with a warning label.
Marriage, kids, all that stuff.
Oh
Yes, I agree.
Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like starting this company was hard.
Yeah.
And it was and I was 4 months pregnant with my son when we started this. And my husband got sick and blah, 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 like, I mean, that's for a bottle of wine
Yeah.
conversation. But when we started building out this curriculum, I was teaching myself.
Mm.
My business partner, Scott, my colleague, Melissa, they're both like FBI backgrounds. What they were teaching me, I was like, all right, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and I'm going to deploy this.
Mhm.
I'm going to put it into practice at the most important place in my life, which is my marriage. And I'm still working on him thinking I'm right all the time.
Yep.
But
He hasn't gotten to that value driver yet, clearly.
no, my man is a strong man, but it's made me so much more empathetic. I would love it if he was a little bit more, but again, he's my partner and it's tough and there's frictious points and there's hard discussions and we get angry at each other and then we love each other but I practice what I preach.
Yeah.
This stuff is just as relevant with your kids and your spouse as it is your colleagues.
Yeah.
Because they're your people.
Yeah. It's and yeah, I think a lot of this can be applied in so many facets of your life. It's one of the stories that come to mind is shall remain unnamed famous psychologist on Dr. Phil on television, and the irony he helps people with their marriage, and irony was that his marriage ended right for years ago. It could be for whatever reasons. Obviously, we don't know, right? But sometimes it makes you question, like, what are you practicing what you're preaching at that point?
And that honestly is, again, marriage is hard.
That's
like
why I say it could be any number of factors beyond your control as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, that's a lot to unpack, but I will say marriage is the hardest negotiation out there.
It is. Yeah. And I think, but here's the thing, these skills, I think it's, as you're saying, it's useful for any type of relationship. Now, I do want to jump to a slightly different topic, but related too, was like, we talked about where things go well, right? But
and then it can go
so badly too, where negotiations go bad. And what I'm putting on the screen right now is a bottle of Sriracha. So if you unfortunately have never tried Sriracha, it is one of the best hot sauces ever. Okay, made with hot chilies. You and I talked about this, and the article is about it says Sriracha rose from nowhere to become an iconic American food brand. Here's how a few knocked it off its throne. You told me that this is a great example of negotiations gone bad. So talk more about that, like where an organization or people could learn from you.
Learn from Sriracha not to be a hot mess.
Yeah, not to be a hot mess. Like, can you dive into that a bit?
Yeah. So for those listening, I am a devout follower of Fortune magazine. I subscribe to it. I love the articles. I love the learning. And this was a case study shared in probably January, February 2024's edition. But it was about Sriracha, which, David, like you, I love. And I had noted in the stores that there was less of it. I was like, what's going on? Why can't I get my damn hot sauce? So the story of this is where conflict resolution they couldn't get there. It was between two gentlemen. It was a gentleman who had immigrated to the US, I think in the early 70s, and used his family recipe to create Sriracha, but he needed the peppers harvested at a very particular time of year. And that was hard to find. There they are. They're there. There's the players.
Yep.
And then this farmer had all of this land and needed someone to, buy his crops. And so serendipity happened and they met. Two lovely gentlemen with good intentions. So 25 years, these two guys, they work together. They're allies. Like it's handshake deals. The farmer keeps building up his acreage to grow peppers for Sriracha. Sriracha only gets peppers from this guy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like their kids grew up together. That's trust. That's almost like blood. And something went wrong.
What went wrong?
Someone did a misstep. And then the finger pointing began. And this is hundreds of millions of dollars, almost 30 years of a relationship together built on trust and faith in one another. And their egos were triggered and they couldn't back down. And not only did they part ways, but they went for each other's jugulars. And it was a really sad story. Like, you know what causes problems? People. You know what can solve problems? People. We are our worst enemies. Like, but we can also fix these things. Like, the world's an interesting place, but I still think it's good. I still think it's a very, very good place. I do, with a lot of spice in it. And so if people could just stop thinking they're right all the time and be a little bit more empathetic, we might get to a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this,
And we'd get more hot sauce.
we get more hot sauce. Well, I did see the hot sauce back on the shelves recently, in the supermarket. So I don't know what happened there and how they resolved it. Maybe they kissed and made up, or maybe found a different supplier, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But yes, ego. So
Ego.
they're saying,
Ego.
yeah, the guy who runs this place, it says his trans business model is make product and not profit. Maybe you should add one more P in there. People. Be good to people, or something like that. All right.
Well, yeah, there's so much there.
So Joanna, like, I guess you talked earlier on about if you knew what you knew, how much more successful you would have been in your negotiations in your earlier years. So if you were to spin back a time machine and talk to an earlier, younger version of Joanna, what advice would you give her?
So I, in my previous life, had a hilarious nickname. It was CYJ.
What's that?
Cool your jets.
Cool your jets.
Cool your jets. Because I was this thoroughbred that just like took off out of the gates and forgot that I had a team with me. And it caused a lot of problems. I was so keen. So to Joanna, 25 years old, my advice would be slow down. Don't be in such a rush in your negotiations. Slow down, get to know your counterpart, profile them, do your value assessment, plan your strategy, know the players, and engage. But keep the really cool nickname, CYJ. I love that.
Yeah. Reminds me of a saying that someone shared with me a couple of years ago, was that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yes, it's so powerful.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
And then, when you think about in the world of like negotiations, for all those listening out there, young leaders, emerging leaders, what advice would you give to them? Like, if they're folks who are well advanced and think they're hot shot in negotiation, or there's folks who are just, getting into that world and learning how to do so, right? What advice would you give to them?
Don't forget that you're also negotiating with another person. It's not all about you.
I'm not going to assume I know what that means. What do you mean?
I mean that I've been with very senior level executives. And when they sit down with us, it's like, this is what I want. This is what we want. This is what we're going to do. This is my objective. This is what I want. And then we say, okay, what about them? It's not all about you. Like, yes, we're being hired to help you achieve your objectives, but if you haven't done a thorough assessment of what the other side wants and how this is going to benefit them, you don't have a dance partner.
Dance partner.
Yeah. And that's what a negotiation is. It's a dance.
It's a dance. Yeah. That'll be the title of this. Negotiation is a dance.
Shall we dance?
Shall we dance? Step on each other's toes a bit.
Yeah.
So I guess last question to you, just around, you talked about building a business here, and we talk a lot about leadership here as well. What sort of guidance do you have for people out there who are thinking about embarking on a new adventure, starting their own business, changing jobs, whatever it might be? But it's a big step. What are some of the mental points you would or advice you would give to folks? What's your mentality need to be? Where do you need to be in order to succeed?
Buckle up. Like, I started this off the side of my desk. I think the first training session I ever delivered was in 20, and I had so much fun with it. And I built it. I had my side hustle. I thought I was ready to launch, and I Would I change anything? No, but I had not been prepared for the stress that I felt and the anxiety, like the almost overwhelming anxiety I felt when I didn't know what I was making every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
Holy smokes, that kept me up at night.
Yep.
It really did, because my husband was sick at the time and he wasn't working.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember one time there was like $2,100 in our corporate bank account and I almost buckled. Yeah, I almost went back to working for another organization. But my husband's the one that was like, don't you dare keep this up. You've got something special. Go. So for anyone listening who's thinking of embarking on their own side hustle, if you don't try it, you'll live with regret. Just understand that it might go well and it might fail, but you tried. And there are going to be your highest highs as an entrepreneur, and there are going to be some of your lowest lows. But if you've taken 10, 20 years to develop your skill set and you're good at what you do, the world's going to recognize it. And I think you've got something to push.
You mentioned there the importance of someone who believes in you, your husband in this case.
Yeah.
To give you that proverbial hug and say, just keep going.
Just keep going. And that's I wish I would say that like Benjamin Franklin came up with this quote, but I was flying back from St. Louis for work this week, and I was watching Aquaman 2.
Okay.
Yep. And the actor who was Aquaman, I can't remember his name.
Jason Momoa.
Okay, yeah. Big handsome fellow. He's holding his newborn son and he's looking at his dad who raised him as a single parent, and he's like, how did you do this? And the dad in the movie said something along the lines of, some days you just have to measure success by getting out of bed. Like, it is day by day.
Yeah.
It's not what's in your bank account. It's not what you're wearing. Success is measured in little things. And I was like, oh, look at that. Aquaman. Thanks for the quote. But we could pretend it was Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah. Or Albert Einstein or someone.
Yeah, or Churchill or someone.
Winston Churchill.
Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah. Okay. I always leave the last question to my guest to ask me any question you want. It could be about anything. So you put me on the spot.
When are you launching your own firm?
Am I launching my own firm?
Side
hustle. This is going to, I don't know yet. So short answer, don't know. Has it crossed my mind? Yes.
I love what you're doing. You can tell.
What it actually is going to be that's going to be of value to other people. So when they talk, the Japanese have a term ikigai. And I don't remember all the quadrants, but basically something about passion and what people need and it's something you're good at. And when all those things come together, that should be the thing you do. I'm good at this and I like this. I don't know how to monetize it yet.
Yeah.
So,
well, your organization that you're with is lucky to have you, right? Because you teach that internally.
I do. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So there's something there. I just don't know what it is. And I'm putting pieces together right now. For instance, I don't know where this is going to lead me. Like I recently got my ICF coaching certification. I'm working towards my professional coaching certification. I know there's something there, just not yet. I don't know. So this is where I follow the smell versus look for the food, right? Like I know this is the right direction. So to answer your question, I don't know, but I know I'm in the right direction, and I trust my instincts. So good. All right. I was going to ask you a question like, hey, have you profiled me? Have you been profiling me this whole time, by the way, that we've been talking? Maybe. Okay. Okay. We'll see if we cut this out. How would you negotiate with me? Where do you put me in the quadrants? I
would put you in the center right.
What's that mean? Center right.
So compromise, accommodate, when pushed, collaborate.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you're high on cooperative, midpoint low on assertive.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So you push me around a bit.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah. Well, so this is an interesting one. People tease. Like, I mean, we're a negotiation firm. Ask me how many people negotiate with on a rate.
I'm sure a lot of people do.
No, they don't.
Really?
They don't even start, right? Which is shocking because, like, we're supposed to be the beta test. Right? Like, come on. This is what we do. Start now.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so what I find is that if we were brought into an organization full of competitors, they'd say, you're too soft. We don't want you. We want to go for the jugular and bleed blood from our stone, which is not the client that we want to work with.
Yeah.
Our client, our sweet spot is cultures that are more on the cooperative, low assert scale, because that's where we can make them a lot of money, lots of money.
Okay.
Because their people are conceding. They're making concessions, they're accommodating, they're not pushing back, they're not collaborating, they're buckling, especially when they're concerned that likability will be diminished in a relationship.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you just gave me hope that I can make some money then. Thank you.
Yep, I think you can.
All right, Joanna. Well, it's been 40 minutes with me and you. It's flown by.
Yeah, no, thank you. This has been really fun, and keep doing what you're doing. This has been a
I
joy.
appreciate you. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, but thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome. That was fun. Hopefully you got what you wanted.
Oh, I got more than I wanted. So this is excellent. Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah, have a great day, and let's stay in touch.